friends, my name is Chelsea. Welcome to Little Mountain Ranch and to my kitchen where we are going to get up to all kinds of different projects today. We're going to do 2 canning recipes. We are going to make some kombucha and I'm going to show you how to start your own kombucha SCOBY using a store-bought kombucha. And we're also going to make some water kefir, which is something that I have never done before. So this is going to be a new one. So also when I was doing a little bit of research on water kefir online, I found it pronounced 2 different ways. Water kefir, like I'm saying it, and water kefir, which I had never heard it pronounced before, but I heard it online somewhere pronounced like that and I looked it up and sure enough, it is pronounced both ways. So I'm curious to know what way you pronounce it, if it is something that you have made before, but I'm looking forward to that because like I said, it is a new one for me as far as fermentation goes and I do love to ferment. The first recipe that we're going to make is the relish, and this relish can be used on a meat sandwich, on some chicken, even on fish. It's supposed to be good on lots of different things. I have made rhubarb chutney before and I've really been enjoying that recently with cheese and crackers, also on chicken and on pork chops. And this has very similar ingredients, so I'm sure it's going to be good on all of those things as well. So the first thing that we're going to do is measure out 2 cups of rhubarb, which I have already chopped up here. So remember when I was sharing my last rhubarb recipe and I was saying I didn't think I was going to have enough rhubarb to do all the recipes that I wanted to do with rhubarb this year. From my patches, I have 4 different rhubarb patches this year. But because it has been relatively dry, or at least it was at the beginning of the spring, they didn't grow really well. And sure enough, that's going to be the case. This is going to be the last, mosquito. Got it. One sec. The mosquitoes fortunately don't seem to be too bad. Usually June is the worst for mosquitoes where we live. And so far, they're not too terribly bad. We're still getting a few in the house now and again. And if you go out around 6 p.m., they can be really bad. But in the daytime, they have been manageable, which is great. So we have our 2 cups of rhubarb in here for this recipe. This recipe is from myislandbistro.com. And I'm going to be following this one exactly according to what she has on her website. But the next recipe that we're going to do, the barbecue sauce, I'm going to be playing around with a little bit, but I'll share with you where we're getting the base recipe from if you want to go and reference that. Okay, we're going to use 2 cups of onions for this recipe, and I'm using a mix of red and white onions. I've added 2 cups of brown sugar to this, but because I have golden sugar rather than brown sugar, I'm going to add a little bit of molasses. So white sugar is just brown sugar with the molasses removed, and brown sugar, depending on the darkness of the brown sugar has more or less molasses. So I'm going to add a little bit of molasses to this because it does call for brown sugar, and I do want a little bit more of a darker kind of molassesy flavor to this. Half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of allspice. Allspice has a very strong flavor, so make sure you smell it first if you're not familiar with it, and make sure that it's something that you want in your recipe. 1/8 teaspoon of pepper, a 1/2 cup of cider vinegar. I don't have cider vinegar, but I do have apple cider vinegar, so we're going to use that. And it also calls for cayenne pepper, which I am currently out of, so I'm going to omit that. So we're going to go put this on the stove. We're basically going to cook it down until it is nice and thick. This can take up to 1.5 hours. I find it's more like 45 minutes or so, but you want it to thicken, and all the syrupy kind of stuff that's on the bottom, you want to make sure that that's thick too, and it'll kind of be like a thick maple syrup when it's ready. So we're going to get this one on the stove. The recipe that we're going to be using as inspiration for the barbecue sauce, so when you compare what I'm doing to the recipe that I'm going to link, it's not going to be the same because I'm just using this as an inspiration, but it's called GubbaHomestead.com is the name of the website that this is off of. So we're going to add 8 cups of chopped rhubarb to that. I am going to add all the onions that I have here, but the recipe calls for 1/2 cup of chopped onion, but I like lots of onion in my barbecue sauce. We're going to add a 1/4 cup of white vinegar. And a 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar. I am going to add a little bit of Worcestershire sauce to this because I love Worcestershire sauce. So I'm just gonna add, I don't know, a teaspoon-ish or so. I'm going to add a little bit of tomato powder. Maybe a tablespoon-ish. We're going to add a good tablespoon of garlic powder. I like a pretty garlicky sauce. A little bit of cinnamon, but not too much. A little bit of paprika, but not too much. And 3.5 cups of brown sugar. So I'm gonna do the same thing that I did with the other one, and I'm gonna add a little bit of molasses to this. And then once I have this cooked down, I'll taste it and decide what else I wanna put in here. So that was around a tablespoon or so. So we're gonna pop this over on the stove and let this start cooking down, and when I go to kind of taste it and play around with the flavors a little bit, I'll make sure that I show you that step too. So I'm just going to put all of this stuff away, and then I'll show you how we do the kombucha next. That relish recipe actually called for some grated orange peel too. And I only have these little mandarin oranges, which aren't quite the same flavor as, say, a navel orange would be as far as the zest goes. But we'll still add a little bit of it anyway, because I think it'll be a really nice flavor in there. So when it comes to experimentation with canning recipes, it is completely fine to do that as long as you understand the basics of safe canning. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of research to figure that out. So when I am experimenting with recipes, keep in mind that it is because I have been doing this for a long time and I understand those basics. When it comes to seasonings in almost every recipe that you're going to do with canning, you can usually play around with those. When it comes to the ratio of the ingredients to the amount of vinegar or sugar that you're going to be using for the recipe, you don't want to play around with those because the recipes are usually designed with understanding those ratios to make sure that you're canning a safe product. So I'm just going to go throw this orange peel here, which is around, I don't know, 3/4 of a tablespoon, into our absolutely delicious smelling sauce back there. It smells so good already. Before we get much further, I have something that I know many of you are going to be quite excited about. So I launched a tea towel with gingerbread. When was this? 2 months ago, maybe a little less than 2 months ago. And this is our tea towel design. So it's a flour sack material, and it says Little Mountain Ranch on there by Gingerbread. I absolutely love this. This has a lot of my favorite things. There's a canner, canning jars, gardening, favorite flowers, all of that. We sold out of these towels. We sold out of the first run within 12 hours, I think it was. Gingerbread said that we could do a pre-order for another run, so we ran that for 24 hours and sold tons of them. They had done a bulk order and they just wrote me last week and let me know that there were 40 towels left because we only had that pre-sale, I think it was for 48 hours or something like that, that we ran that pre-sale for. And so anyways, they have 40 more, that's it, 40 more tea towels left in their warehouse, and they're giving me the opportunity to share this with you before they put them on their website. So I would really encourage you, if you wanted one of these tea towels and you weren't able to grab it, I'm not sure if we're going to be running this particular design again. We are planning a new design with a matching apron and also some covers for like sourdough bread bowl covers for I think September-ish or so, but I don't know if this design is going to come back. So if you want this one, click the link below and jump over and order them, because once they're gone, they could potentially be gone forever. This is one of my favorite projects I've ever done. I just love it so much. But let's talk about kombucha. This is kombucha right here. So what kombucha is a fermented sweet tea, and it's fermented by a SCOBY, which I'm going to show you in a second, which is a symbiotic what does it stand for again? Symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. That's what it stands for. And that is actually what ferments your tea. So I'm going to walk you through the process of making kombucha right now. But what I wanted to share with you is that you can make your own SCOBY at home using store-bought kombucha. You just have to make sure that the kombucha that you're buying is raw and that it doesn't have flavorings in it. It's not the end of the world if it has flavorings in it, but I do find that with the process I'm going to share with you now, it slows down the process of it for whatever reason. I have only ever tried doing this with GT's raw organic kombucha. So I'm not sure if you could do it with other kinds of kombucha, but I know this one works for sure. So all I do to make my own starter is I get a quart jar. Do I have a quart jar handy? One sec. This is the size of a quart jar. So I add a 1/4 cup of raw organic cane sugar and 2 tea bags, 2 black tea bags. I actually use Earl Grey tea bags, which seems to work just fine. And then fill it halfway up with boiling water and let it steep for 10 minutes. Remove your tea bags, let the water cool. It's important that you let the water cool, otherwise it'll kill all the good bacteria in your store-bought kombucha. And then fill up the jar the rest of the way with your raw organic kombucha. Cover it up. Make sure that you use a something that the air can flow through, and set it aside. It usually only takes about 7 days for a SCOBY to form. It'll still be quite sweet at that point, so you can give it another 7 days to make a really strong starter, and then you can move on to the process I'm going to show you right now and make your kombucha. It's super easy to do. So that's what I did in this case. I actually worked my way up to a 1/2 gallon jar here, so I'm going to be able to drink some of this kombucha now. We're going to take 6 tea bags here, and we are going to open them up and make sure that you take the little tag off and throw them into a gallon jar. Kombucha is so easy to make and it's so delicious. So I love it. It's usually only something that I do in the summertime though. I'm hoping I'm gonna like the water kefir too. It took me a while to get used to fermented anything. Really, I started fermenting, I don't know, 7 years ago, I think. When I first started making kombucha, might have been a little bit longer than that. And just the flavor of kombucha even took me a while to get used to, and then I started getting into fermenting other things, and it took a while, but now I absolutely love it. So we're going to do a full cup of sugar into our sweet tea. And something to keep in mind when it comes to kombucha is that the bacteria and yeast will actually eat the majority of the sugars that are in kombucha. So by the time you drink it, there's not a lot of sugar left, which is kind of nice. I'm just gonna wait for my kettle to boil. I'm going to fill that jar halfway up and then let it sit for 10 minutes. So we only need a cup of our starter in order to start our big batch there. But I'm actually going to use, I don't know, close to a liter of it, which is 4 cups. Because this is not a super strong batch yet and the SCOBY is not huge. So I want to give it a little bit of extra bacteria so that it can really get going. So can you see that floating, gross looking thing right there? That is a SCOBY. So that's actually what you want. They're not attractive looking. It's gross, really. But once you kind of get used to that, I think your brain just forgets that it's really disgusting looking and focuses on how good kombucha is. So don't worry about it if it looks really gross and it grosses you out, because the kombucha itself will taste good. So I've decided that I'm actually going to pour off half of this, and I am going to drink this. Not the whole entire thing, but I will share. But the rest of this, wow, that is a lot. We are going to put right into, once our tea has cooled down, we'll be dumping this right into it. And I'm just going to keep it covered up and set it back over here. So with this kombucha that I have here, you have a choice. You can actually do a second fermentation, which usually takes around 3 days or so, and add some, say, berries to it, some peaches, some kind of fruit to it, and then that will carbonate it even more and make it more fizzy. I actually don't mind it after the first fermentation. It's still fizzy enough for me, but if you want a lot of that carbonation, then I do recommend doing a second ferment. I don't know if you can see that there is a little carbonation in that. Oh, that's actually really fizzy. Super good. Oh, fizzy. That's delicious. So I am just going to pop a lid on this and then put it into the fridge so that Dan can have some when he comes home. As you know, Dan loves fizzy drinks, so he's a good person to be testing my kombucha with. But that's really good. It's a little tiny bit too sweet, so it could have gone for a few more days, but still pretty good. So let's get into our water kefir. These are the water kefir grains on the bottom here. So we are going to strain this out. This was some dehydrated water kefir grains that I got from, I'm not sure the name of the company because it was on Amazon, but it was here in British Columbia. And I rehydrated them for 24 hours in some sugar water. So this had a 1/4 cup of sugar. It was supposed to be to a liter of water. This is just under a liter of water. And now they are rehydrated and activated. So now we can actually make our water kefir with it. So I am gonna try tasting this, although I'm sure that it's gonna be way, way too sweet. I need to grab another jar. One sec. So apparently, similarly to the kombucha, I can do a second fermentation to carbonate the water kefir by adding some fruit to it and doing exactly the same thing, having it in an airtight container. Maybe I didn't mention that when it comes to the kombucha. You do want it in an airtight container so that the carbonation can build. You just want to make sure that you burp it every day. I have had them completely explode before when I've opened them up when I've forgotten to burp them. So same rule applies here. Let's give this a little taste. It's very, very sweet because this has not been sitting for very long. Apparently it needs to sit for around 3 days. This has only been around 24 hours or so, so it tastes kind of like sugar water, but I can taste a fermented kind of flavor that I can imagine will increase over the time of proper fermentation. And I like it. So that's good. At least I like it so far. Definitely too sweet though. Oh my goodness. And into this, we're going to put 4 cups of water. We're gonna add a 1/4 cup of sugar to this. And we're gonna mix this up and dissolve our sugar in our water. Probably not a bad idea to boil your water, add boiling water, and then let it cool. But I am impatient, so we're not going to do that. And then we're going to add our 1/4 cup of kefir grains into there. Stir those around. I am going to do a second fermentation with the water kefir. So next week sometime we'll come back together and I'll show you what it looks like when it is all carbonated. Hopefully it works because this is the first time I've ever done it. Oh, I missed a step, and this is apparently optional. You can add a 1/4 cup of your kefir water back into it. So I am gonna do that just because these are recently activated kefir grains and I want to have as much bacteria in there as we can get. So both of our relish and our barbecue sauce are ready. So I'm just gonna clean this off and then we're gonna get our jars ready to go, get them filled up and can them. For the relish, I am gonna leave it chunky. You can see the texture of that. because I like a chunkier relish. But for the barbecue sauce, I'm actually gonna put it through the blender and make it nice and smooth. I don't usually mind barbecue sauce if it has a few chunks kind of onion in it, for instance, but for the most part, I like it smooth. So let's give this a taste without burning our mouth. Oh my gosh, that is absolutely delicious. Super good. And that orange peel, definitely worth adding. Okay, I need a ladle and we have a funnel here. I have decided that I am going to use half pints instead of pints for the relish. So I'm gonna go grab a couple of those, but I will use these ones for the barbecue sauce. Actually, let's just do that first. Sometimes when I pull my appliances out of the cupboard to use them in a video, I'm always kind of horrified with how dirty they are sometimes. We actually had smoothie for breakfast this morning and this got put back into the cupboard without being wiped off. And I actually think that was my fault. I don't even think I can blame that on one of my kids. Okay, there is our barbecue sauce. So I'm just gonna give it a taste and see if we need to add anything else to it. It's nice and thick. Oh my goodness. That is also so good. Very sweet. That's a lot of sugar in there, so that makes sense that it would be super sweet. But the flavor of it is absolutely fantastic. Super good. Got a blend. Nice and smooth and super easy to get into our jars. Look how nice and thick that is. We got a little extra there, but we did get 3 pints of that. Okay, we're gonna wash our rims off. I did make a little bit of a mess on this one, but the other ones were pretty well perfect with being able to pour them out of the blender like that, but we'll still give them a wipe off anyway since there's so much sugar in there. We're gonna be using our steam canner today, and I'm gonna steam can these for 15 minutes. This is what a steam canner looks like for those of you that haven't seen one before. The base of it is over there, so we just put a little bit of water in the bottom of it, and the steam is actually what cans it. So depending on what kind of steam canner you buy, this one's the Fruit Saver, it'll give you detailed instructions in there on how to use one. Because we are canning 2 different products that have different processing times, we're going to be choosing the longer of those 2 processing times to can, so that way we know everything in our canner is safe. Okay, we have our little jars here. These recipes are so similar that I am actually going to add the remaining barbecue sauce that I have to this relish. I'm gonna call it barbecue sauce on the label. So the reason that I'm doing this is because that way I will have full jars, and the recipes are so similar in flavor that this will just taste just fine. So we'll call this one barbecue sauce though, because it does have more of the barbecue sauce than it does have the relish. But now we shall wipe off our rims. Oh, the Band-Aids on my hands, by the way, are from when I was cutting the onions before I turned the camera on. I slipped because my knife was dull. I hate using dull knives, and I just didn't sharpen it before I cut my onions. And I managed to cut my pinky finger and my thumb at the same time. I don't know how I did that. Not serious cuts, just little nicks, but enough to bleed a little bit, so yeah. Anyway, sharpen your knives, friends. So I'm gonna pop these on the canner, put our lid on, and then once it comes up to the temperature it needs to be at, I'm gonna set it for 15 minutes, so I'll be back with you when I take these out and show you the finished product. Our sweet tea is now done, so I'm gonna just pull the tea bags out, give it a stir so that the sugar mixes in, and then we're going to wait until this cools down to room temperature before we add our kombucha to it. All right, friends, there is our relish all done and everything sealed up. And there is our barbecue sauce. Super happy with both of these products. And now we have our sweet tea here that has now cooled down. And my washing machine is now done too. We're gonna take our, excuse me, our kombucha here with our little tiny SCOBY, and we're gonna dump that right in. And now we're just gonna finish topping this off with some water. Our water is both filtered and non-chlorinated from the tap, but if your water is chlorinated, then you do wanna make sure that you use some other type of water that does not have added chlorine, because that can mess with the yeast and the bacteria in your kombucha. Now all we're going to do is cover this up. We're going to set it aside out of direct sunlight and let it ferment for around 7 days or so. And the SCOBY on the top will continue to grow until eventually it covers the entire circumference of our jar, our larger jar here. So that's probably gonna take at least 2 or 3 more batches to get to that point where there's a nice big SCOBY on our kombucha. I'll keep you updated on the water kefir over there and let you know how that goes. There's another mosquito. Mosquito season, oh my goodness. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed hanging out with me today, everyone, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.